Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Backstage Bimbo TV. It's me again, Allison Rouse, your most notorious groupie and author of We've Got Tonight, The Life and Times of Notorious Groupie. Me. That's right, folks. Welcome back. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for all the love. As always, nice to meet all the new people that are stumbling onto my channel and enjoying it. Thanks for being here with me, everybody. And to the 53% that are not subscribed, subscribe. And to those subscribers, watch the videos. Let's spread me like I spread my legs in the 80s. Let's get this out here. Because this is groupie. This is reality. This isn't Almost Famous with rose-colored glasses. Nope, not at all. Speaking of glasses, today we're going to have a Rocky Talkie. And we're going to kind of go in to a subject that is going to be a little bit tricky. So we're going to talk, unfortunately we recently lost Taylor Hawkins of the Foo Fighters and many other bands. Really incredibly talented musician, father, husband, friend, brother, lover. It's just really sad. And, you know, they're really, the press and everything is really just harping on the drugs and the enlarged heart. So we're going to get into that. And today we're just going to I'm having one of my favorite brew houses. This is Boulevard out of Kansas City. This is their Bourbon Barrel Quad. Really delicious. So everybody, grab your quads, kick up your heels, and let's have a Rocky Talkie, shall we? Cheers, big ears. So good. You know me, I'm a bitch for a bourbon soak. Whoops. So anyway, condolences truly go out to Taylor Hawkins' wife and children and bandmates and friends. It really is a tragic loss. But having been through something like this myself, I kind of tend to watch the public side of things. And I feel so bad for the family. Because not only do they have to get the phone call from the coroner's department, the health department in Columbia, they also have to deal with it a second time, third, fourth, fifth, in the press, because they're hearing everything we're hearing a day or two before us, hours before we are. At least in my experience, that's how it was. So I'm so sorry for everything they're going through, and for the Colombian press to be, and the state to be so quick and out there with details that are going to be painful for the family. You know, and it kind of got me thinking, because they were talking about Taylor's enlarged heart, and it's so due to drugs and all this stuff. And I posted something on my Facebook about this. You know, talking about, that's really odd, because Vinnie Paul, my Vincent Paul, he died of an enlarged heart. Didn't do drugs, though. He was a drinker, but not an everyday drinker either. But never did anything harsher than weed. Maybe a couple times cocaine, but no heroin, no nothing. He was just a straight-laced partier. You know, he died of an enlarged heart. Another friend of mine whose ex-husband was a drummer, he died of a heart attack. My friend Jason, who you've heard me talk about in my Seattle videos, he died, or his drummer's got a fucked up enlarged heart. Lifestyle choices, and because of the physicality it takes to be a drummer. So it really kind of annoyed me that they were blaming all this on drugs. Will Taylor's death be drug related? Probably. If not just doing it, the after effects. But that's not the case for every rocker, and it drove me nuts, because everybody thinks when a rocker dies, oh, there's drugs and groupies involved. John set that trend, didn't he? But that's not always true, because like I said, Vinnie Paul didn't do drugs, enlarged heart. Now, my friend whose husband was a drummer that passed of a heart attack, his heart was not enlarged, but she did say something that was quite interesting, that drummers tend to have irregular heartbeats because their body's trying to keep up with the beats of the drum. And their body's just totally giving into that rhythm. So that was kind of interesting. I mean, do drummers just have generally more heart issues than the other musicians because, let's face it, what's his name? The replacement for KK and Judas Priest, Richie, he had a heart attack on stage. This guy's not a drug doer. So, when somebody dies, it's always going to be, oh, he was doing drugs. He's got a drug problem. And it's not always true because, in my experience, maybe 10% of the rockers that I've known, and trust me, I've known a lot, not just the ones I've slept with, but a bunch more outside of there. The majority are just drinkers and weed smokers, and even then, they know their limit. Yeah, we can party hard when we were young and we were discovering this world, and it was the 80s. It was crazy. Everybody was experimenting, but through those experiments, we decided what we didn't want and didn't want to do. And cocaine, even in the 80s, in my experience, was not an every band thing. It was maybe 50% of the bands I hung out with, but mostly it was smoking weed, having some drinks, getting laid. Defines the 80s, right? Well, because everybody has these such conceived notions, because of movies like Rockstar and Almost Famous, and because rockstar deaths due to drugs are always highlighted. We've lost a lot of other rock stars to nothing that had to do with drugs, car wrecks, old age, all kinds of stuff. But it's the ones that are always drug involved that last the longest in the press, that are always the most sensationalized, that those paparazzis will gather at that hotel within an hour of calling 911. Because people want that myth. Well, I'm here to tell you, mostly it is a myth. It is. Especially these days, because, like I said, James Hetfield, not a big drug doer. Never saw him do anything but really drink. Wasn't a weed smoker, maybe did coke a couple times that I saw. Got a bleeding ulcer on the Injustice, maybe the Black Tour, but quit drinking heavily because of that, because he's a hypochondriac. So Lars was the big coke doer in Metallica, and even he's quit. You know what I mean? So, for people to perpetuate the sensationalism to sell papers and for the public to believe that every rock star is going to die because they had such a hard life, they're such crazy drug doers and all this crap. Hold on. Me and my animated hands and my water bottles. Anyway, so it just kind of bothers me that people kind of pigeonhole the rock stars in a way that they do the groupies, that they have these expectations because this is what Hollywood and journalism has shown rockers to be. Drug doing, partying, groupie, shagging, just crazy boys at all ages, and that's not true. Like I said, I've been around a ton of rock stars, not just the ones I've slept with, but their bands and other bands that I've hung out with that I haven't slept with. And rarely have I seen crazy drug problems like I did with Dave Gahan or Lane Staley or what's his butt, Scott from Stone, Scott Weiland. These are I can count on both hands the drug problems I've known in the rock stars that I've been with, which that's fraction of the rock stars that I know. So, when you're listening to the stuff about Taylor, even when Vinny died, it was brushed over so quickly. Not because he wasn't as big as rock star or loved as much or more than Taylor, but because it was not drug related. And people buy what the papers are selling. They don't always want to hear the truth. A lot of people don't want to hear the truth about John. They want to be stuck in he was doing coke off her stripper's ass and just doing a mountain of blow. It's like, no, he did a line off the top of the TV center. But he was 57 years old. And Taylor was 50 as well. Same with Chris Cornell. We're all approaching 50. And your body starts to change in your heart and your joints hurt and doing the drugs and partying and falling off the wagon. And not to mention, people don't count the drugs that are prescribed by the doctors in Hollywood as drug problem. And it is. And in today's society, when you have someone that has had a heroin problem, the doctors will automatically put them on, you know, um, methadone or mood suppressants or mood enhancers or relaxers or all kinds of things that we deem safe because the doctor prescribed them. Well, I think we could ask Judy Garland and Elizabeth Taylor and, old Hollywood all about those, right? Mm-mm. There's just as big a problem in prescribed drugs. And today, that is the bigger problem. It's not necessarily heroin or cocaine. It's because Hollywood is still churning out the prescriptions. Ask Anna Nicole Smith. How many prescriptions were found in her little fridge when she passed away? Under how many names? And, the problem isn't illicit drugs anymore. Weed's legal in most states. It's about to be legalized federally, and people worry about heroin or cocaine or fentanyl and stuff. And these are drugs that need to be worried about in society in general. But don't blame the rock stars, because the majority of them don't have these drug problems. It was just such a handful. Even in the 70s, the 80s, even in the grunge era, the majority of the grunge guys didn't have a heroin problem. It was just sensationalized. And people want to feed into that sensationalism. Well, don't, because like I was saying, the prescription drugs are truly a huge part of the problem. Same with Chris Cornell. He had a lot of prescription drugs in his system. Same with Chester from Lincoln Park, who committed suicide. Had a lot of mood suppressants. And, doctors think by prescribing, mood enhancers or mood depressors or whatever, methadone, that it's going to be better and replace the illicit drugs. Not necessarily. Not at all. And don't think that every rock star on the face of the earth has had a drug problem, because most of them have not. That's just like most of your friends don't have drug problems, but we all know a few people that have had struggles over their lives, unfortunately. Alcoholism, now that's a bigger problem in rock and roll than drugs. But today, nobody parties like they used to, especially after COVID, because I just hung out with my friend Oris, who was working for Journey and stuff, and there's no backstage anymore. There's no hanging out like we used to, because everybody's in their COVID bubble. Like, they're not supposed to go out to dinner with friends or anything. Like, they can converge in the hotel bar still, and it's a pretty wild scene at the hotel bar. No drugs, though. Nobody getting fucked up, wasted like we did in the 80s. So you guys really, really don't be buying into what the press is saying and what is being reported, because the tox results that came back in 2 days are not going to be as comprehensive as the ones that come back in 2 weeks. Think about it, because the ones they're doing in 2 days are pretty much the same ones the parents use. It's not going to tell you if it's cocaine or this and this and that. It's going to tell you the elements: THC, opioids, whatever. So don't always throw that, oh my God, poor guy fell off the wagon or was doing drugs again. That's not always the case. Those opioids and heroin, which you consider heroin, could be in those prescription medications, because those prescription medications use all those ingredients. Cocaine used to be in Coca-Cola, for fuck's sake. But those class 3 drugs prescribed by those doctors are the actual real problem today. Not like they used to be in the grunge era, heroin, and that kind of spilled down into society, where more kids in society were doing heroin than compared to the rock stars. And that just always bothers me, because society sensationalizes things that aren't really true. And the sensationalism makes a myth out of it all. And I can tell you right now, like I said, there's not a lot of drugs. You don't even hear me talking about a lot of drugs, even with all the rock stars. Scorpions, no drugs. Toby Keith, weed. Cypress Hill, weed. The trend here is not drug-related. Rock and roll is not a drug-soaked community. In fact, it's a quite more sober community than it is drug-soaked, and people supporting each other in sobriety, which is fucking awesome. Because rock and roll has always been a supportive community backstage and up front. We've always been able to support each other through shit, hold each other's hair back while we're puking in the bathroom. And we do that when people are becoming sober in rock and roll because we know how important it is to give that support for sobriety. So while you're sitting there, people are posting all over social media how sad and pathetic it is that Taylor died of drugs or Chris Cornell or whatever. Don't be so degrading and feel so sorry for him. Be supportive. Because there's people that this really does matter to, that this is going to domino effect in real life. Because it did John's family. It did me. It did Chris Cornell's family. It did plenty of other women through history. So don't think just because one rock star that everybody's so soaked in drugs. Totally opposite. Maybe 25% I've seen in my lifetime out of the 100% of rock stars that I've met. And don't believe everything about enlarged hearts and stuff. Because like I said, drummers have such a physical job. Watch, next time you're at a concert, watch that stage. Yeah, the guitar player and singer and bass player are kind of running around. But that drummer is going with every fucking inch of his body. His arms, his legs, his toes, his fingers. His gut is moving at all times. It's like a stripper pole workout, but sitting down. It is brutal. So the fact that those guys, drummers, have enlarged hearts, I don't think is up to the drugs. And I think that the medical community should kind of study that in drummers and musicians in general. Because, yeah, when they're doing concerts and stuff, it's a huge physical job they're doing for 2 hours. Imagine doing your cardio for 2 hours and how exhausted and sweaty and just spent you are at the end of that. And how bad your heart is beating out of the chest. Could be. Nobody's ever made a study, but who knows? So there you guys go. In lieu of the late Taylor Hawkins, God rest his soul and be with his family. But just because of that, I wanted people to understand that just because one rock star out of a band dies of drugs, or bands of a certain era might have had, drug issues, the biggest rock stars of that era, doesn't mean that the whole of rock and roll is wasted. Because we're not. In fact, there was a study that said the 80s rock kids were the most mentally well-adjusted adults of our time. So, don't let those bad apples that that have a tragic death like that ruin the bunch. Don't believe the hype. And realize that, yeah, while Vinnie Paul's death of an enlarged heart got about this much attention, Taylor's going to get this much because of the drugs found in his system. It's all bullshit. It's all hype. Don't believe it. So, there you guys go. There's my weekly ranty, rocky, talkie about drugs and rock and roll. It's not as crazy as you think. Listen to my vlogs. Is it drug related? No. Is it centering around drugs? No. Not very often. Don't believe the bullshit. Believe what you read here, or hear here, or read in my book. So, thank you guys again for all the love and support, and welcome to all the new people that are haunting me and that are just subscribing. You guys rock. Now keep watching. Press the like, press the share. Get me out there. All right. So we will see you this Sunday for a cocktails and rocktails. Cheers, big ears. Thanks again, everybody.